Tiên là em xin cảm ơn tất cả quý thầy cô đã có mặt trong buổi hội thảo ngày hôm nay. Đây là cái buổi hội thảo đầu tiên nằm trong cái chuỗi hội thảo thuộc dự án nâng cao năng lực lãnh đạo cho phụ nữ, được tài trợ bởi Hội đồng Anh British Council. Và dự án này đánh dấu cái sự hợp tác giữa trường đại học University of Hertfordshire của Vương quốc Anh với 3 trường đại học tại Việt Nam là Đại học Công nghệ Thành phố Hồ Chí Minh, Đại học Đông Á và Cao đẳng Cộng đồng Đồng Tháp. Em là Nhung. Hiện đang là phó phòng quản lý hợp tác và dự án quốc tế tại trường Đại học Công nghệ Thành phố Hồ Chí Minh, và đồng thời cũng là người sẽ chịu trách nhiệm quản lý dự án ở phía Việt Nam. Và mình sẽ có một số các cái giáo sư đến từ trường Đại học University of Hertfordshire là đối tác đồng hành với trường Việt Nam trong dự án này. Dạ. Một lần nữa thì em kính mời quý thầy cô vừa mới cho vào trong phòng Zoom, mình sẽ nhìn sang một chat bên tay phải giúp em để mình có thể xem cái hướng dẫn sử dụng phần mềm Zoom Caption Translator và đảm bảo là các cái nội dung bằng tiếng Anh mà phía giáo sư trình bày sau sẽ được chuyển thể thành tiếng Việt để mình hiểu được toàn bộ nội dung của buổi hội thảo ngày hôm nay. Dạ. Đây là cái phần sơ lược đầu tiên một chút xíu về dự án. Tiếp theo đây thì em xin chuyển sang nói tiếng Anh hoàn toàn để có thể bắt đầu cái phần chính của cái buổi hội thảo ngày hôm nay. So now we would like to begin the official program. So first of all, thank you very much for all of you to join the workshop today in our project, Gender Equality. Let me introduce our distinguished participant and guests joining us today. First of all, I would like to introduce Ms. Hoàng Vân Anh, Head of Education from British Council. And I'd like to say thank you so much for British Council to sponsor our project. Second, I would like to introduce Dr. Lý Thiên Trang, Vice President of HUTECH. And under the guidance of Dr. Lý Thiên Trang, we've received a lot of support from her to receive this project from British Council. And I would like to introduce Dr. Lâm Văn Vũ, Vice President of Đồng Tháp Community College. Maybe he's still not joined the workshop. Yeah, so I'd like to say thank you for all of you to join the workshop today with us. Before we move to the part of Professor Helen, I would like to say a little bit in Vietnamese about the survey from after the workshop. Dạ, kính chào quý thầy cô ạ. Sau cái buổi hội thảo ngày hôm nay thì tụi em sẽ gửi đến quý thầy cô cái phiếu khảo sát của hội thảo. Thì như quý thầy cô đã biết thì cái buổi hội thảo ngày hôm nay nó chỉ là buổi hội thảo đầu tiên trong cái chuỗi hội thảo mà sẽ diễn ra thuộc dự án này. Vì vậy mà tụi em rất là mong sẽ nhận được cái phần khảo sát từ quý thầy cô. Thì thông qua cái phần khảo sát này, quý thầy cô có thể nói lên những cái chủ đề mà quý thầy cô mong muốn rằng những cái chủ đề hội thảo tiếp theo sẽ tập trung vào. Và em hy vọng là quý thầy cô có thể đưa ra những cái góc nhìn khác để dự án có thể phát triển tốt hơn. Và thông qua những cái góc nhìn của quý thầy cô thì tụi em sẽ liên tục cải tiến những cái chủ đề tiếp theo của các hội thảo, và em rất mong là quý thầy cô sẽ tiếp tục đồng hành cùng những cái sự kiện tiếp theo của hội thảo, và mong là những gì mà dự án này mang đến cho quý thầy cô thì sẽ giúp cho quý thầy cô có thể phát triển hơn nữa trong cái sự nghiệp của mình. Dạ, em xin cảm ơn và em xin chuyển cái phần tiếp theo đến cho giáo sư Helen thuộc Đại học University of Hertfordshire, Vương quốc Anh. So Professor Helen, please start your part.
Thank you so much, Hung. And Chào Bui Chi O, Tentoila Helen Barefoot at the University of Hertfordshire. I'm Director for Education. I'd like to also introduce my colleagues with me today, Sarah. So Sarah, would you like to come on screen?
Hello, everybody. Very nice to meet you all.
And also Dr. Kim Tran. Kim? Will you unmute, Kim?
Hi, everyone.
Thank you, Kim. So welcome, everybody. We're so pleased you're able to join our workshop today. The plan for the workshop is to spend approximately 1 hour talking about the project and also about leadership and the underrepresentation of women in leadership in universities. And then the second part of the session, we'll have a half-hour networking where you'll go into small groups and meet each other and discuss about your ambitions and aims in terms of leadership. And network with colleagues from the different colleges and universities. So we're delighted so many people could join us today, and we're delighted to have distinguished guests with us as well. So thank you very much for joining. We're going to use a tool called Mentimeter to share our slides, which has an interactive component within it. So we'll talk through some basic information within the slides, and then at times we will ask you to use your mobile phone or your screen to actively join the workshop and contribute to some of the questions that we have for you. So it becomes an interactive session. So I will share my screen and then pass over to Sarah, who's going to introduce about the project as a whole. So I'm hoping you can all see the screen, and Sarah, let's come to you.
Thank you, Helen. It's a real pleasure to be with everybody today, the guests who've joined us, the senior leaders from our partner organisations, and of course, everyone who is on the call. This workshop is about the importance of leadership, and it's a way to get started with our project. We want to introduce the project to you. We want to discuss why leadership in academia, in universities, is important, and to consider the underrepresentation of women in leadership roles, both in Vietnam, but also in the UK. Thanks, Helen. The project that we have is very kindly funded through the British Council. Our aim is to empower staff and students and to increase women's representation in leadership roles moving forward. And part of that is about developing and cultivating supportive environments and networks through the collaboration of our 4 institutions on the project, which are University of Hertfordshire in the UK, Ho Chi Minh University Technology in Vietnam, Thap Community College, Dong A University in Vietnam also, and we're really thrilled to be working with such a set of important and diverse institutions on this project. Our aim is to create supportive networks, to raise awareness, to create lots of useful resources for participants, such as people on this call, and make sure that this gender equality initiative can sustain beyond the length of the project, hopefully fostering long-term change in education settings. The objectives of our project are really 4-fold. I think it's useful for you to understand where we are at. This is our first session with a group of people outside of the immediate project team, so we're really welcoming of everyone joining us today. Our aims are to develop a leadership massive open online course, an MOOC, and have around 1,000 participants enrolled on that. And I'll say a little more about that in a while. We have a series of workshops available online over the next 11 months, but also Helen and I have the great privilege of being able to come to Vietnam at the end of June and the beginning of July and visit each of our partner organisations to hopefully meet people in person and run some workshops then. We are also working to establish a network focusing on female scientists as part of the project, and to leverage lots of media and outreach activities to make sure that the materials, the workshops and the messaging are reaching as many people as they possibly can. In our British Council bid, we had to outline some expected outcomes of our project. And I think anyone participating in the project, it's useful for you to understand what we'll be looking to achieve through it. One, as I say, is our Leadership Massive Open Online course and those support networks. They will be across our Vietnamese partners on the project, but also potentially connecting with colleagues at the University of Hertfordshire and beyond in the UK. We hope that the increased awareness through the workshops and the media campaigns will really start a conversation across higher education in Vietnam about making sure that everyone is paying attention to gender equality. And as part of the project, we will want to be collecting baseline data and getting feedback, which is why you heard at the beginning of this session about a survey that will come to you after this workshop. It's really important that we start to measure where people are at in their leadership journey and what their hopes and aspirations are. In terms of our longer term expected outcomes, and these are things that we think will happen around a year or so after the end of our project, which is next April, we want the results to be increased applications to leadership positions from women and with increased female representation in leadership. So this is not a theoretical exercise. The purpose of these workshops and these materials is to initiate change, personal change for the women participating in the sessions, and change for the organisations to better increase the diversity in their leadership teams. We hope that our initiatives become expansive and can be scaled up to be lessons learned for other institutions in Vietnam and across Southeast Asia. And we will be disseminating the knowledge that we have gained from running the project and the research that runs alongside it as part of our project, with an aspiration at the end for both institutional and cultural change. We've included a timeline of activities. This is, as I say, our very first online workshop, but there are a range to come, and we are excited to bring these workshops to you. You will see a range of facilitators in each of those workshops. From the UK, myself or Helen will be in each of those workshops, but we'll also be inviting colleagues to join us from specialist areas to lead on particular content, and also some sessions being led by colleagues from our Vietnam partners, a truly co-created provision, which we're very proud of. Our aspiration is for the MOOC to be available for you to enrol on from June this year. And you can see here some information about what the MOOC will include, information about breaking barriers, having a strong vision, being able to use your power as a woman, and to some practical tools and activities for you to practice developing your leadership skills and to reflect on your own leadership. Later on this year, we will be establishing our female scientist network, but each of our workshops will involve networking, because we think that that is a big, important part of developing your sense of leadership. And our media and outreach campaign will happen throughout the programme. But we can see already our colleagues at HUTECH have been great at setting up the publicity for this programme, which we can see on the next slide, Helen, where we have our programme schedule and our launch video, and our extreme thanks to our colleagues at HUTECH for making such a brilliant start to the project. We are very excited to be working with you on this. I'm going to pass back to my colleague Helen, who is going to get us started with some thinking before we progress. Helen.
Thank you, Sarah. We'd like you now to join the presentation. So we're going to use this tool, mentimeter.com. You can either go to it through the website mentimeter.com and it will ask you for a code, but it's probably easiest if you take your phone and use the QR code from the screen. So if you just point your camera at the QR code, and it could enable you to join the Mentimeter. If you want to go to mentimeter.com, you can do, and the code you will use is 88703293. But it's probably easier just to use your camera on your mobile phone to join using the QR code. So if you point that at the screen, it should enable you to join. I can see 2 people have joined, so I should just wait a few moments more as others connect to the Mentimeter. This is a tool that we use quite a lot within the UK, within our teaching, in classrooms and online, to enable students to engage with the material, contribute to the sessions, perhaps answer questions. And so we thought it would be a useful way for an active engagement in the workshop today.
Thank you, Professor Sarah. Dạ, quý thầy cô ơi, mình dùng điện thoại di động mình scan cái QR code giúp em ạ. Thì nó sẽ đưa mình vào cái đường link của các cái câu hỏi trong cái Mentimeter này. Và mình sẽ trả lời cái câu hỏi này. Quý thầy cô có thể trả lời bằng tiếng Việt ạ. Thì bên đội ngũ dự án sẽ có người dịch ra tiếng Anh cho các giáo sư bên Anh để mình hiểu. Dạ, em cảm ơn quý thầy cô. Dạ. Please go ahead.
So, using Mentimeter, you should now see a screen that asks you, what do we think a leader is? So, if possible, I'd like people to type into the screen, either in English or in Vietnamese, what do you think a leader is? So, you should be able to contribute here what your thoughts are about a leader. So, what do you think a leader is? Hopefully you can type into the box. Lovely. Someone who others decide to follow. Excellent. Let's see if anyone else has got any thoughts. What do we think a leader is? If you could type in your thoughts. Person who inspires her team and gives a vision for the team to keep moving forward. Excellent. So something about this sort of being at the front and taking people with you. A person who brings people to go together where the organisation wants to go. So understanding the direction of the organisation and taking people with them to meet the aspirations of that organisation. Let's see if anyone else has got any thoughts. Thanks to those who've responded. I can see some other interaction. That's fine. It's nice to get to use the tool and get a feel for it. There should be a box for you to type in. Kim or Hung, I might need a bit of guidance. I've got one for translation. So I'll look at the others first. So someone who inspires and influences others. A leader is someone who can lead a team with high knowledge, skills and experience. That's nice to identify some of those skills. A leader is also someone who can give decision under pressure and be responsible for their decision. I think that's really important as well, isn't it? So having confidence to make decisions that sometimes might be very difficult. Leader is a person who helps the teams to grow up and go in the right direction, also inspires them to be the best version of themselves. I think that's a really important one, isn't it? That the leader inspires others to be the best version of themselves and motivates others as well. A person who's someone who brings together and fully utilises their abilities to achieve the organisational goals. We've got this word again, this inspires, guides and supports. Makes a great environment to let the team work easily. I think that's really important as well. The leader is responsible for creating that environment and enabling all of the team to be effective. Leadership is a competence that reflects the ability to manage oneself effectively while generating positive influence and gaining consensus. Good. So we've got lots of ideas here. I'm going to see Hung or Kim, could either of you translate this one for me on the screen?
Yeah, so it's Helen, yeah, I'm going to try my best to translate it into English. So someone says that this is a leader, the leader who is a person who can inspire, give directions and encourage others to reach the common goals. Yeah, of the
Lovely. Thank you
organizations.
so much. Perfect, Kim. That's really nice as well, isn't it? That enabling others and inspiring others. I think that's really coming through in what we perhaps think of as a leader. If we look at, I did a Google search, a Google image search, what does it say about leadership? And if you look at probably about the top 30 or top 35 images for leaders, we will still see approximately 15 of them will either have an actual photo of a man or a caricature of a man in that role. So 15 of those images relate to men being leaders. Only 5 explicitly have women as leaders, and 8 are sort of neutral images. So there's definitely still an external perception that perhaps there are more male leaders than female leaders. But a lot of the images also infer things like being a guide, inspiring others, having followers. So a lot of these have got people at the front, taking people with them. They perhaps imply as well that the leader is the person with the ideas. But importantly, it's that sort of taking people with them. So if we think about some of the words you've identified as well, that inspires others, guides others, working towards a common goal, perhaps taking the initiative, sometimes having to make difficult decisions or being confident in decision making, and perhaps importantly, fostering a good environment for the work team, but also fostering that sense of purpose and sense of importance. I'm going to ask you to come back onto the Mentimeter here as well now. So what skills do leaders need? So again, if you can put your responses in, what skills do you think leaders need? Again, you should be able to type in through the Mentimeter. Got some responses hidden for a minute, so I'm not going to show them until we've got a few more coming in, but this will pick up some skills that you think are important for a leader. So what skills do leaders need? I have responses. I'll just wait a little bit longer. And this part of Mentimeter will build us what we call a word cloud. It'll bring the words together, and the biggest words will be if they've been used more commonly. So if lots of people have used a certain word, we'll see that bigger. I'll wait just a moment or two more in case there's a couple more suggestions. Have a look. It's not showing my responses. There we go. So communication is our largest word, suggesting that many of you think that's really a key skill that a leader needs to be able to communicate effectively, to be decisive, to be encouraging, to be strategic, to be able to make decisions, to be influencing. I think this one's really important here, to be self-aware, to have a really good understanding of our own abilities, our own skills, and then also to understand the skills and expertise of our team members. To be good at teamwork, to be able to work with others, to be able to motivate others as well. And this is interesting, psychological reading. Again, that sort of understanding of oneself and others. Kim, I'm going to ask you again. There's one here that's quite large. Thap.
Yeah, it's kind of the same communications.
Lovely communications.
Yeah.
Excellent. So that's a really important aspect. Thank you for your contributions. That's really good. So if we look at some of the literature, and we look at the Forbes articles about what leadership skills are important, we might think about things you've already mentioned, about motivating others being really important, and ensuring how people within the team understand how their role contributes to the company's vision and the company's objectives, and really understanding that their work, whatever role they're in, really matters. Also, we might talk about that fostering potential. So looking for the potential in others, and that doesn't mean looking for people who are like us. It's about building a team with different skills and different expertise. And also that fostering potential means that we enable people to fail. It's important for others to be able to be comfortable to make mistakes, but then also to learn from those mistakes and develop. And not to get complacent, encouraging them to develop their skills and think about the next stage of their career. That may be still within your own university or at another university, but you're still trying to foster and develop them as individuals. We also might talk about the importance of inspiring trust. It's about being ethical, having morality, being honest, being open, being transparent, and being clear with the team so they understand the objectives, they understand the decision making, even if the decision isn't a popular decision, but you've inspired trust, you've been open and transparent about that decision making. Also about being clear within your own values and understanding how your values align with the values of your institution. And also to stand up for what you believe in and standing up for your team as well, aligned with those values. We might also talk about the importance of setting goals and expectations for others. So being clear about that and the goals for individuals and how they align with institutional objectives or institutional goals. So again, each person understands how their work contributes to that bigger vision. We'll talk about the importance of team building and creating the team effectively, working together, being collegiate and collaborative. The importance of giving and receiving feedback. And I think that's important as well, that constructive feedback, helping people to develop and being clear about that information, giving examples, being specific of when something has gone well, but also when something needs improving on. Taking on, but also giving up responsibility. So the importance of knowing when to delegate and to understand and trust the members of the team, giving them the responsibilities to achieve those key objectives. That is something I'm not very good at, not great at delegating, but something I'm self-aware of and need to be better at. Of course, we talk about thinking strategically, so understanding the wider vision and the wider requirements of your university or your institution. We might also talk about being positive. Work can be very stressful. Being the leader, being responsible can be a burden. It can feel a pressure on an individual. So maintaining a positivity and maintaining a positivity for your team is really important. And that includes, of course, celebrating successes, both big and small, and highlighting some of those little wins to be really important in building morale within the team. And the last one listed in the Forbes list is about authenticity. So being an authentic leader is part of that building trust. It's about our understanding of our own self-awareness, our understanding of our weaknesses as well as our strengths. It's about being open about those weaknesses and not trying to hide them, but also about bringing our whole self. So rather than having one persona at home and one persona at work, that our teams understand who we are and we are authentic, we are honest to ourselves in those situations. So that's the Forbes list, but that was in 2022. What's very interesting in a very recent Harvard Business Review in October 2024, we actually see quite a different list. And this list included some terms that I'd not come across before, including this first one, emotional aperture. And that emotional aperture is defined as the ability to perceive the features of groups of emotions. So how does the institution or how does the whole team feel about something rather than just the individual? So being able to see the bigger picture, and that's why it's referred to as the aperture, opening the lens, having that wider view to understand the perceptions, the feelings, the emotions of a whole group or an institution, being alert to that wider feeling, the wider emotion that might be affecting an institution at perhaps a turbulent time. And I think these leadership skills are reflecting the time that we're in now globally, with global challenges, global changes, perhaps a little bit more turbulent for most countries, and recognizing that these leadership skills have had to adapt to be able to cope in these difficult times. So understanding the emotional feeling of the institution, being adaptive in our communication, understanding the different audiences that we're communicating with and adapting our messaging accordingly, being flexible in our thinking and perhaps needing to change direction or change our objectives based on external pressures. They talk about perceptive seeking, taking and coordinating. So understanding other people's perspectives, seeking other people's perspectives, taking those perspectives on board and coordinating perspectives to understand the overall aim and objectives. Also, this discussion of strategic disruption skills. So perhaps even more relevant in difficult times when things are challenging, that we need to question our norms, question the normal processes and think a little bit differently. Do we need to approach things in a slightly different way? Do we need to change our approaches? And perhaps most importantly, when we're thinking about leading in difficult times, is that resilient self-awareness. So really thinking about our own abilities, our own skills, but also looking after ourselves in difficult times. So finding time for that important thinking, finding time to be able to meet with and talk with others, but also managing that work-life balance and having a bit of, we might talk about self-care, looking after ourselves as well as looking after our team. So I just thought it was interesting that even over a 2-year period, some of the literature is suggesting slightly different wording, different language associated with leadership, perhaps reflecting the challenges in the global environment. All right, I'm going to come back to you then now. So what leadership roles do we need in universities? So thinking about universities and colleges, what types of leadership roles do we need? Again, if you could type in to Mentimeter. We might need a department head, a dean, absolutely. Research leader, principal investigator, absolutely within the research areas. Manager, absolutely. Team leader, so that might be a very localized or a small group. A director, again, that might be a director of a department, so director of estates, for example, director for education. Project manager, absolutely. It might be very specific projects within universities. I'm glad somebody said the president and the vice presidents. They are our very senior leaders, aren't they, within universities? Importantly, they do need to set the vision and the strategic direction, hopefully in collaboration with members of the institution. So we've got some good examples there. I've thought about grouping those leadership roles. So we might think about the senior management. We might talk there about the principal, or sometimes in the United Kingdom, that role would be called the provost, particularly at some of our Scottish universities. We might also use a term, the vice-chancellor. All of those roles, the principal, the provost, the vice-chancellor, would all be very similar roles within a UK university. They'd be the chief executive for the university. And then they would likely have a deputy and pro-vice-chancellors or deputy principals, again, just changing that language. Also within that senior management team, we might include the finance director. So part of that decision-making, the financial stability, this financial direction of a university. We might then think about our academic leaders. So the deans of faculty, the deans of school, the deans of colleges, the heads of department, the research leaders or the principal investigators, the professors within the university, again, might be leading research teams, for example, but also then we might have directors of learning and teaching or directors of academic quality as academic leaders working across a whole university. Then we might also have those professional department leaders. So people not working in the academic sphere directly, but working within the university to ensure the appropriate function and maintenance of the university. So we might have an academic registrar, the director of human resources, chief information officer for all the digital accessibility and abilities within a university, director of estates to manage the buildings, head of careers or head of skills relating to the student activities, and also head of student services, student finance, student support, and also, for example, the head of library. And then at a more local level, we might have what we think of as team leaders. So that might be, if you're teaching, you might be the program or the course leader for your degree in physiotherapy, for example. So you'd be leading the other people who teach on that course. Within the course, there might be units. So we might refer to that as a module. You might be the module leader. But also we might have the administrative team leader as well, supporting the admin. So we can think about leadership at different levels within the university, but importantly, those skills that we've talked about already are going to be applicable for anyone in any of these roles at any of these levels. Thinking about that leadership and understanding how we lead within an institution, we need to understand our own institution and how that sits within the wider context of university within the UK or universities within Vietnam. So if I'm thinking about my university, I am in a United Kingdom higher education context, so it's the UK HE. I would also think, what type of university do I work at? At the University of Hertfordshire, we are a professional and technical university. We used to be a polytechnic. So we have a real focus for our students on employability, on getting a job once they finish their degree. We are not as primarily focused on research as somewhere like, for example, Oxford University or Cambridge University. We have more of a focus on our technical subjects, so a lot of healthcare subjects, a lot of education, a lot of engineering, to enable our students to be employed after their degrees. We might also think about, what does the student body look like? For us, we have a large number of postgraduate students, and particularly international postgraduate students, but our students from the UK, our home students, are often coming from underrepresented backgrounds, so lower socioeconomic backgrounds, Black, Asian or minority ethnic students, and students who perhaps wouldn't previously, 30 or 40 years ago, wouldn't have gone to university. So we would think of ourselves as having a widening participation background with students from very diverse backgrounds and experiences. And then what does our university call itself? Within our new strategic plan, we would define ourselves as a modern, dynamic and enterprising university. So as a leader, I need to understand all of these elements to think about how my work and my team's work fits within this wider context. And for the University of Hertfordshire, I need to understand about our strategic plan. So what is it our university is trying to do? We've just written a new strategic plan, so we have a new ambition from 2025 to 2030, and to grow our reach and reputation regionally, nationally, and globally. So growth in impact, growth in global reputation, and growth for our community. And alongside that, we understand how we're going to do that. So we're going to shape the careers of tomorrow, the education strand for the students. We're going to think about solving global challenges, the research activities within the university. We're going to advance our global community, think about our international student recruitment and our international partnerships. In order to meet these wider aspirations, we then have to think about what structures underpin that. So to enable our future, we need to understand the digital platforms within the university and the digital systems and processes. We need to also develop our potential through our sense of belonging for our students and our staff, to make sure our staff are fully developed and supported within their roles, and to also transform our campuses to manage our estates and understand our teaching facilities. All of that will help us then with our wider ambition to power our staff, students, and society. Importantly, though, we need to recognise what the university values are. The green aspect of the circle here are our values. And our values, which I really like, are that we value friendliness, we value ambition, we value collaboration, we value enterprise, and we value student success. And for me, it is really important that my personal values align with the values of our institution. So I want you to think about, what are the values of your universities? Do you know the values? Are they explicit? Are they visible? Are they communicated to the wider community, to staff and to students? Do you know them? Because it's important that we understand the values of our organisation and that our own values align with them. If I didn't believe in these values, I shouldn't be working at my university. And I don't think I would be if I didn't believe in them. So we need to understand the strategic vision. We need to understand the values. We need to then be able to communicate with our teams to understand how our roles and responsibilities support the strategic vision of our institution and our colleges. So I'd just like you to take a moment, perhaps have a bit of paper or just have a little think. And I want you to make a list of your roles and responsibilities. So what do you do in your current jobs? What are your roles and responsibilities? That might be line management, that might be being a researcher, that might be teaching. But what things do you do in your job? And which of those involve leadership? So just having a little think and perhaps write down some thoughts. What are your roles and responsibilities? So I'll just give you a moment or two. I was thinking about my roles and responsibilities. I have a role in strategic decision making. That definitely involves leadership. I'm a head of a department, which involves leadership. So I have responsibility for the well-being and the health and safety of members of my department. I have budget responsibility. Is that leadership, or is that just accountancy and management in that sense? I'm a line manager, so that is management, but also does involve leadership. I'm a committee member for various parts of the university. I'm also a teacher, so I teach neuroscience. Does that involve leadership? It involves perhaps leading my students, but I wouldn't define it in some of the ways that the other responsibilities have leadership. And also, I'm an external reviewer at other institutions where I do think I have a responsibility as a leader at other institutions to help them critique and reflect on their practices. But importantly, when we're thinking about our own roles and responsibilities, we need to identify which of those involve leadership, and also how do those responsibilities support your university or your college's ambition and objectives. So making that link from what we're doing here to the aspiration of the university. For many of us, we might be leading without direct authority. So we might be leading people, but not having their line management responsibility. So we might have to lead them and influence them, but not have line management responsibility. So we're not directing their work. So we need to think about how we can influence and guide without that direct authority. And a colleague, Jo Cahill, and I lead our programme leaders, work across the university and help them to lead their teams. And we thought about some tips for leading without authority. So thinking about how do you create the effective team? How do you work together as a group? And it leads directly onto that second one, a communication of a commitment to collegiality and that collaborative working environment. So communicating with others, not to others, so working with them and listening with respect and interest for the ideas of the group. We talk about being inclusive, so creating an environment without blame ensures everyone's contribution is recognised and valued, giving praise and encouragement, supporting others and recognising their different perspectives and different experiences and valuing those differences. Leading with enthusiasm, so sometimes work can be difficult, can be challenging, but ensuring we maintain that positivity. We also talk about creating allies, not competitors. Sometimes the academic environment can be competitive. People can want to do better than others. They want their module to be really good. They want their students to be really good. But that's not helpful for the greater commitment. So cultivating relationships, mediating conflict, dealing with issues as they come about is really important. And to help with that, we might lead with some questions rather than just having an immediate idea or thought. We might use questions. What if we did this? Could we consider doing it a different way? Have we possibly overlooked something? As the leader, they might have to take responsibility. Your team members need to trust you and be able to ask. They need to be able to ask questions. You need to also be able to have confidence in your answers for those questions. And perhaps most important is to develop your emotional intelligence. So recognizing your own intelligence and emotions and also the emotions of others. And we'll look at emotional intelligence in a little bit more detail. We also talk about recognizing the boundaries of your role, particularly when you're leading without authority. So if you're not the line manager, yet you're influencing or guiding others, sometimes if they're not doing that, you might need to speak to their manager. So knowing when to speak to other people, knowing when to take that question to others, because it's gone beyond the boundary of your role. And also the importance of building a reciprocal network of those people. So you've got a support network. And that's partly why we're going to do a network activity with you at the end of these workshops. So I mentioned there the importance of emotional intelligence. If we look at the meaning of that, we might define it as the ability to understand the way people feel and react and to use this skill to make good judgments and to avoid or solve problems. So if we think about emotional intelligence competencies or the skills that we include within emotional intelligence, we would think about self-awareness. So understanding our own emotions, how our emotions impact us, how they might affect others. We would talk about self-regulation. So how we control our emotions and our impulses, managing stress and perhaps understanding when things are stressful, but managing the situation so that stress doesn't impact on others. We'd also think about motivation and having a strong sense of self-direction, but also helping others in their motivation for their work. We would think about empathy. So understanding and sharing the feelings of others and really putting yourself in their shoes, really trying to understand their background and experiences so you're understanding their perspective. And also having some social skills, so building and maintaining those effective relationships, communicating effectively, and also understanding how to resolve conflicts. All of those emotional intelligence competencies are going to help us with improving relationships, enhancing our leadership, improving our personal and professional success, also helping us to manage our mental health, and also our better decision making. So emotional intelligence is really important within leadership. And if we think, okay, well, that might be difficult, I don't know how to do that, there are absolutely ways to improve our emotional intelligence. We can practice that self-reflection. We can identify and help to name and understand our own emotions. We can practice empathy by speaking to people, understanding their perspectives better. We can manage our stress. We can develop some coping strategies. We can understand what might trigger our stress and how we can manage or limit that. We can improve our communication skills, practicing active listening, for example, and expressing emotions clearly. And most importantly, seeking feedback from others. So if we get feedback about what we're doing well or what's not going so well, it can really help us with this emotional intelligence development. All right, I'm aware we're coming towards the last part of the workshop, and I really want to think about women leadership, particularly in Vietnam and also in the United Kingdom. And looking at the data associated with male and female employment rates in Vietnam, we can see that there are a lower proportion of women employed in all forms of labour within Vietnam compared to men. So 68.3% of women are working in Vietnam compared to 77.6%. But it's actually been improving a lot. And certainly there have been the development of family-friendly laws, particularly understanding about maternity and childcare, and also the Education for All plan, which I've been looking at. It does seem as well that there is a Vietnam law on gender equality, which was enacted in 2006 and aims to guarantee the equal rights and opportunities for men and women in all aspects of life. So you've got laws in place to ensure gender equality. Well, let's have a look. What is the gender pay gap in Vietnam? So again, onto Mentimeter, you should now have a multiple choice question. So if you can select, do you think the gender pay gap, so the difference between the amount that men are paid compared to women, is that pay gap 6%, 12%, 18%, or 24% in Vietnam? So even though there are lots of women working in Vietnam, they are still paid, or there is a pay gap that's less. So we've got a guess at 12, we've got a guess at 18. Let's have a look. What do people think? 6%. Only one person thinks it's 24%. I hope it's not 24%. That's a high amount, isn't it? A big gap. Got 9 responses. All right, let's have a look at our answer for this one. It's actually 12%. So the gender pay gap in Vietnam is 12%. So still significant and work to do to reduce that. Let's have a look at male and female employment in the United Kingdom. This is actually quite similar. So 71.8% of women are working, 78.2% of men. So again, still higher for men. But if we look at that in a little bit more detail, 36% of women in employment are in part-time roles compared to 14% of men in part-time roles. So even though the proportion of women is high, it's over 70%, 36% of those are working part-time. And also, if we look at how that distribution of men and women in different roles varies across different sectors, we can see that if we look at health and social work, 77% of jobs are held by women. And in education, that's 70% of jobs are held by women. So we can see those differences in how women are distributed across the workforce. In the UK, we have the Equality Act from 2010, which prohibits discrimination, harassment, and victimisation on the basis of protective characteristics, which include sex and gender reassignment. It means that employers need to be fair when coming to hiring, paying, promoting staff, and understanding our workplace policies. We also have another piece of legislation, the Gender Pay Gap Regulation of 2017, and organisations with more than 250 employees have to publish their gender pay figures every year to encourage transparency and accountability, with the aim if they're publishing those gaps, they hopefully will reduce them. And there's also the Employment Rights Act of 1996, with protections associated with maternity leave and redundancy rights for pregnant employees and new parents. We've also had a very recent flexible working amendment regulation in 2023, which is the employees' rights to request flexible working to help with their work-life balance. And more recently, we've also had the neonatal care leave and the pay policy that came into action this month. So we've got quite a lot of legislation to really support women within the work environment. Within our university, we also have a number of networks that support women. So we have the Network of Women Plus Professors and the Academic Women's Action Group, both networks set up to support the development of women within academic careers. And we also have two support networks which have a high female membership, the Menopause Network and also the Working Parents Network. We have a commitment within the university to gender equality, and we've been awarded the Athena Swan Silver Award, which recognises gender equality within the university. So there are a number of ways within UK higher education, within our laws, but also within our practices within an institution that promotes gender equality. Having said all that, what do we think the gender pay gap is in the United Kingdom? So again, having a little vote. I've left the responses hidden this time. So what do you think the gender pay gap is in the United Kingdom? So we said it's 12% in Vietnam. What is it in the UK? Just wait for a few more responses to come in. Do we think it's 3%, 5%, 7%, 10%, or 15%? Yeah, it's 7%. So 7% within the UK as a whole. I'm embarrassed to say that within our university, it's actually 11%. So it's higher than the national average. And even though we're doing a lot within the university, we have still got a significant gender pay gap. So there's still a lot of work to be done. Another quick question for you as well then. So what percentage of people who work in the UK universities are women? So we've got a gender pay gap nationally of 7%. That's not within universities, that's the whole of the employment sector. But what percentage of people who work in universities do you think are women? So is it 24%, 34%, 44%, or 54% in the UK? What percentage of university workers are women? So you've got 9 responses. It's actually 54%. So 54% of workers in UK universities are women. So a very high proportion of women work in universities, higher numbers of women than men in universities. However, what percentage of academic leaders in UK universities are women? So 54% of the workforce in universities are women. What percentage of academic leaders in universities are women? Is it 18%, 28%, 38%, or 48%? So we know we've got more women than men in universities, but what's that percentage of women leaders? Just wait for a couple more votes. Okay, so, oh, that's optimistic. Optimistic people, 5 people think 48% of leaders are women. Sadly not, very sadly not. It's 28%. So 28% of academic leaders in UK universities are women. So even though the workforce is predominantly female in UK universities, only 28% of the leaders in universities are women. So this is why this project is so important. We know there's underrepresentation of women within many industries, but importantly, there is underrepresentation of women leadership within universities, both in the UK and within Vietnam. So that brings us to the end of the workshop element. So hopefully through the workshop, we've introduced the project, our project on addressing women's underrepresentation in leadership, and we've seen the data that supports that. We've considered the importance of leadership in academia and the different roles that people might have. And we reviewed the data which indicates an underrepresentation of women in leadership roles, and also had a quick think about some of that gender equality legislation that's in place to try and eliminate those inequalities. So at this point, we are going to ask you now all to go into breakout rooms. Sarah, I'm hoping, has set up some breakout rooms for us. We've got 70 participants. So we're going to go. Brilliant. We are going to put you into groups of 6. When you get into your breakout room, please introduce yourself with your name, the institution that you work at, and the different roles and responsibilities that you have. And this period, this time that we've got, is for you to get to know each other, for you to network, to understand each other's roles and responsibilities, and also to discuss then your leadership ambitions. Where is it you want to get to, perhaps in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years? What is your ambition? And also, having had that conversation with those people in that group, you might also think, are there any actions that you will take away and do following this workshop? So, for example, will you have a little bit of a look at more detail at emotional intelligence? Will you go away and identify and have a look at your institutional strategic plan or the values of your institution to see how they align with your values? So if there are any actions that you'll take following this workshop, please also have a chat about them within the groups. So we're going to put you into the groups until, so we're at 9:36 my time, 3:36 your time. So we'll give you to 5 minutes before the hour. So we'll bring you back from the groups at 15:55. That's right, isn't it? 15:55. All right, so I'm going to hand over to you.
So thank you so much, Professor Helen and Professor Sarah. And I will speak a little bit in Vietnamese. Dạ, kính chào quý thầy cô ạ. Dạ, em cảm ơn rất là nhiều vì quý thầy cô vẫn đang tiếp tục đồng hành cùng với hội thảo. Dạ, sau đây thì mình có thể vào trong cái breakout room để mình chia sẻ thông tin với nhau. Hoặc là quý thầy cô có thể ở lại trong cái phòng room này và có thể tiến hành đặt câu hỏi hoặc là tham gia thảo luận với các cái diễn giả giáo sư đến từ University of Hertfordshire, Vương quốc Anh. Quý thầy cô hoàn toàn có thể đặt các cái câu hỏi bằng tiếng Việt và phía dự án sẽ có người chuyển cái ngôn ngữ này sang tiếng Anh cho phía giáo sư Hertfordshire. Đồng thời thì phía giáo sư họ cũng đang có Zoom Caption Translator để chuyển trực tiếp ngôn ngữ tiếng Việt của mình thành tiếng Anh. Dạ. Tụi em sẽ mở các cái breakout room và quý thầy cô có thể tham gia vào các breakout room hoặc ở lại phòng Zoom chính này để tiếp tục trao đổi với các giáo sư đến từ Đại học University of Hertfordshire. Và em nhấn mạnh là mình hoàn toàn có thể đặt các cái câu hỏi bằng tiếng Việt. Thì phía dự án sẽ có người chuyển dịch thuật phần câu hỏi này sang tiếng Anh cho các giáo sư. Dạ, em xin cảm ơn. Well, I just thought that someone, if they want, they can move into the breakout room to introduce each other. But if they don't want to move in the breakout room, they can stay here and chat with you. Like give you some questions, and if they speak in Vietnamese, we will try to translate into English for you. Or you can use the Zoom Caption Translator to understand well about their questions. Yes.
Thanks, Han.
Thank,
Perfect.
thank you for
Dạ,
that.
nếu mà quý thầy cô
And,
mình có bất kỳ cái
that's
câu hỏi
fine.
nào thì mình có thể
Okay.
tạo cái tín hiệu giơ tay trong Zoom và tiến hành đặt câu hỏi ạ. Dạ em cũng muốn thông tin thêm một chút về dự án Gender Equality này. Thì lúc mà nhóm dự án bắt đầu ý tưởng viết dự án này thì nhóm dự án rất là mong là thông qua dự án này có thể giúp nâng cao năng lực lãnh đạo của tất cả mọi người, không phải chỉ phái nữ mà cả phái nam. Trước đây thì khi mà lần đầu tiên em tiếp xúc với cái cụm từ leadership thì cá nhân em cũng nghĩ là mình sẽ phải là một lãnh đạo thì mình mới cần phải quan tâm đến leadership. Nhưng mà sau một thời gian thì em nhận thấy là leadership nó không chỉ dành cho lãnh đạo. Bất kỳ ai dù không giữ các cái vị trí quản lý thì đều cần cái tinh thần leadership này. Đó là cái tinh thần mà lãnh đạo chính bản thân mình đề ra những cái kế hoạch cho chính mình. Và em rất là mong quý thầy cô có thể tham gia nhiều hơn nữa vào dự án này, đưa ra thật nhiều góc nhìn. Quý thầy cô có thể chia sẻ những vấn đề của mình và có thể thông qua khảo sát để nói cho nhóm dự án biết rằng có những cái vấn đề nào mà quý thầy cô quan tâm hơn, cần được lắng nghe và chia sẻ nhiều hơn. Và như lúc nãy giáo sư Helen có thông báo thì đầu tháng 7 khóa học trực tuyến về năng lực lãnh đạo sẽ chính thức được phát hành trực tuyến trên nền tảng EMS của Trường Đại học Công nghệ Thành phố Hồ Chí Minh. Và dự án cũng mở hoàn toàn để cho tất cả mọi người có thể tham dự vào cái khóa học lãnh đạo này. Khóa học này sẽ được thể hiện hoàn toàn bằng các giáo sư tại Trường Đại học Công nghệ Thành phố Hồ Chí Minh cũng như các giáo sư tại Trường Đại học Hertfordshire. Và em tin là những cái kiến thức cũng như là những cái chia sẻ từ cái khóa học này sẽ giúp thầy cô hiểu rõ hơn về năng lực lãnh đạo mà mỗi người trong bản thân mình cần. Dạ, em rất hy vọng là quý thầy cô có thể đồng hành lâu dài cùng dự án này. Dạ, bây giờ là phiên thảo luận thì em cũng rất là mong là sẽ nhận được nhiều chia sẻ của quý thầy cô. Dạ, em xin mời.
Okay, shall we move to our breakout rooms now? Hopefully the system will move you to a room, but you can return to the main room if you wish to. But we will come back together at 15:55 just for some final reflections.
Làm đến và cũng đã làm đến một cái gọi là leadership trong cái công việc đó. Sau đó thì mình chuyển sang làm giảng viên của trường đại học Hertfordshire cách đây có 3 năm thôi. Thế và trong 3 năm đó thì mình cũng đã có một số các cái học hỏi và cũng đã có một số những thành quả trong cái nghề nghiệp của mình. Thế và mình hiện tại thì đang làm gọi là mình phụ trách một số các cái mảng. Thứ nhất là làm giám đốc cho một cái chương trình về đào tạo những cái người làm việc với công tác xã hội ở cái mức gọi là mức ở cái level gọi là level lãnh đạo. Thứ hai là mình cũng phụ trách về cái sinh viên quốc tế của trường. Thứ ba là mình cũng đấy là cái công việc chính của mình hiện tại bây giờ. Thế và trong cái việc mà mình cũng không rõ là cái câu hỏi của các bạn, vì mình vào cái Zoom, quay lại cái Zoom này là hơi muộn một chút, thì Nhung có thể nhắc lại cho mình cái câu hỏi về như này không?
Dạ, câu hỏi đó là những cái nét văn hóa cũng như là những cái rào cản tại Việt Nam để ngăn cản cái sự thăng tiến của người phụ nữ. Dạ, nó có liên quan đến cái văn hóa. Dạ.
chính xác, bởi vì khi mình ngày xưa mình làm Việt Nam và bây giờ mình so sánh với bên cả UK thì mình thấy là thực ra là Việt Nam cũng như bản thân mình thôi, nếu mà mình nghĩ lại cái bản thân mình ấy, là cái việc mà mình cảm thấy rằng là mình chấp nhận cái sự chấp nhận giữa cái sự chấp nhận của người phụ nữ người Việt Nam rằng là mình là người phụ nữ, mình là người của gia đình, mình sẽ chấp nhận rằng là mình sẽ chịu thiệt thòi hơn trong nghề nghiệp, trong con đường sự nghiệp. Thế và cái sự chấp nhận đấy đối với mình đó là một cái sự rào cản rất là lớn. Ở UK thì mình thấy rằng là cái sự đấu tranh của người phụ nữ ở UK cao hơn là người Việt trong sự nghiệp. Thế và khi mà khi mà người phụ nữ Việt mình nếu có cái tinh thần đó, ý thức được rằng mình cũng là có khả năng, mình rất có khả năng, mình rất là có nhiều những cái tài năng, và nếu mình có sự hỗ trợ tốt thì mình cũng sẽ làm được như những người nam giới đồng nghiệp của mình, và mình cũng sẽ có những mức lương như vậy, và mình cũng có những cái vị trí như vậy, và đối với mình thì đấy là cái quan trọng nhất. Thế và tất nhiên ở UK thì cái việc mà đấu tranh của người phụ nữ để đến được cái mức như mạnh lãnh đạo cũng đang trên đường thôi, cũng chưa đến đích. Nghĩa là các bạn cũng thấy là cái pay gap rồi cái tỷ lệ người phụ nữ ở trong vai trò lãnh đạo UK cũng rất là thấp, nhưng các cái phong trào, những cái tổ chức, những cái hoạt động nó rất là cao, và mình nghĩ rằng là đấy là cái ý thức của người phụ nữ ở UK, họ tất đấu tranh. Thế và mình nghĩ rằng là ở người Việt Nam mình, cái truyền thống của người phụ nữ vẫn là người cho gia đình, vẫn là người mẹ, vẫn là người vợ. Thế cho nên là cái tư tưởng đó có ảnh hưởng đến cái sự thành công của người phụ nữ trong vai trò lãnh đạo. Đấy là cái quan điểm của mình và cái nhận thức của mình.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kim. As you can see on the chat box, there were another question, and you have to translate into English for Professor Helen and Professor Sarah. Thank you.
We were speaking about the question that is in the chat just before many colleagues joined us back from the breakout rooms, but I think it's worth in summary saying in response that where cultures need to change, schools and universities and colleges can put actions and processes in place to make deliberate choices to make promotions better for women in positions. So we shared our stories about specific workshops and networks that we run here at the university. But Helen, you were also sharing examples of internal rules that we have to better recognise the diversity of the staffing, and particularly in terms of recruitment, weren't you?
Yeah, we have internal rules within our university that if we are appointing a member of staff, so an interview panel, it must have a diverse panel membership, so the people who are making the decisions. So it must include a woman, it must include a person of colour, so a Black, Asian or minority ethnic background person, and also we might also think about the diversity of the age of the panel members. So we might have a younger panel member or an older panel member as well, to recognise the background and experiences of the applicants. So to just finish off with the workshop, we were just going to ask for your reflections on those conversations. Again, I'll just share my screen, and hopefully you are still within Mentimeter. So if you can, and if you'd like to, please could you share your leadership ambition and include your name in the post if you'd like to, because we'd like to capture that as part of that baseline data. So what is your leadership ambition for the next maybe 5 years or 10 years? What is it you want to achieve in terms of leadership? So again, within Mentimeter, if you can share within the text box, please do. And we'll just keep a record of these as part of that baseline evaluation. So hopefully you had good conversations in the breakout rooms, and if you'd like to share your leadership ambitions.
So thank you. So Professor Helen, please see in the chat box, and you can see one more question for you. I try to translate in English, and the question is like, I would like to ask how the school facilitates female professors and staff to have the opportunity to develop their careers at the school, especially female staff who wants to be promoted to management level. Yes.
Thank you for that question. It's a really good question. So as we mentioned, we have workshops and staff development activities. We have workshops about leadership. We have workshops associated with management skills. So for individual staff to go on to those workshops. We also have workshops and support routes to encourage women, particularly to apply for associate professor and professorships as promotional routes. But perhaps more importantly, we have mentoring mentoring and coaching schemes throughout the university. So if you are looking for, I want to get into this management position, I might do a leadership course, I might do the management training, but I also then might have a coach or a mentor who has been in that position who can help me understand the opportunities I might want to take to get there. And that might include being on a different committee or a working group, for example. It might be volunteering to take part in one of our networks that the university has. It might be recognizing the different opportunities that I might think about taking. I might think about being an external examiner, all of this skill set that I developed through different roles and responsibilities to put me in a good position to apply for that management post when that post is advertised. So it's helping to navigate the routes to get to that point that I want to get to. So I think coaching and mentoring is really good, but importantly as well, that conversation with your immediate line manager. So does your immediate line manager know what your ambitions are? If you haven't had that conversation, they can't read your mind. They don't know that's what you're aiming for. And we said the role of a leader is to motivate, develop others. They need to know what your ambition is. So if you want to get to this role, you want to have this management post, then talking to your line manager about it and asking them to help with that development plan to enable you to get there is really, really important. So I think it's really crucial to share your ambition with your line manager, to talk about what you want to achieve. Kim, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can.
You can speak in
Yeah.
Vietnamese. Yeah.
Yeah,
So this is another question for Dr. Kim. So I will speak in Vietnamese.
Okay.
Dạ chị Kim. Dạ em thấy
mình
là
sẽ
dạ,
mình sẽ
em
chia
thấy
sẻ mình chia
dạ.
sẻ cái kinh nghiệm bản thân mình là mình cũng đang hướng tới là để xin cái professorship ở trường của mình. Thế và mình tham gia cái mentoring scheme, nghĩa là mình có một cái mentor và có cái coach. Thế và họ cho mình, nghĩa là ở trường đại học Hertfordshire có một cái scheme rất là tốt, nghĩa là cái tiêu chí để trở thành một cái associate professor chẳng hạn rất là rõ ràng. Thế và khi mà mình đăng ký vào cái chương trình gọi là mentor, nghĩa là có cái người giúp đỡ mình ấy, thì mình cùng cái người đó như là vạch rất là rõ ràng cái hướng đi, những cái bước đi rất là rõ ràng, và tất cả những cái này thì đều có những cái sự gọi là đồng ý cũng như là trao đổi với lại cái người line manager của mình, là cái chị sếp của mình. Thế và những cái này các bạn nên nghĩa là mình rất là rõ ràng cái mục đích của mình. Thế và cộng tác với nhiều người, mình cộng tác với rất là nhiều người trong khoa cũng như là trong trường. Thế và mình với những cái người có kinh nghiệm, đã từng trải qua những cái bước đường như thế. Thế và họ trở thành cái người mentor cho mình. Thế và mình cũng theo họ. Thế rồi mình chia sẻ những cái đam mê, những cái mục đích của mình. Thế và họ nhìn thấy những cái đam mê, mục đích đó, và họ cùng mình giúp mình vạch ra cho mình những cái hướng, những cái bước đi rất là tốt. Thế và mình nghĩ đấy là một trong những cái kinh nghiệm của mình để mình chia sẻ. Như là nếu như trường ở Việt Nam mà cũng có những cái chương trình mentoring, những cái workshop để đưa ra những cái rõ ràng, những cái expectation, những cái mục, những cái gọi là cái tiêu chí để trở thành ví dụ như một manager hoặc là một director hoặc là một professor là cái gì. Thế và mình cùng với lại những cái người mà quốc, mình làm việc với những cái người mà đã có kinh nghiệm và cùng mình để mà xác định ra những hướng đi và những cái bước đi cho mình tiến tới những cái mục tiêu mà mình muốn. Đấy. Cảm ơn.
So this is a question from me to Dr. Kim. So I will speak in Vietnamese. Please use your Zoom caption translator to understand our conversation. Dạ chị Kim. Dạ chị có thể cho em một cái góc nhìn là ví dụ như khi mà chị bắt đầu làm việc tại trường đại học Hertfordshire thì phía trường đại học đó họ đã có những cái hỗ trợ gì cho chị khi mà chị làm việc tại trường, bởi vì bản thân mình không phải là người Anh đúng không ạ, mình là người nước ngoài, thì Em thấy là em muốn có một cái góc nhìn xem là những cái trường đại học ở Anh chẳng hạn sẽ hỗ trợ cho cái công việc cũng như là cái sự thăng tiến trong sự nghiệp của những cái người nhập cư như thế nào. Dạ, em cảm ơn.
Thực ra thì ở Anh họ rất là bình đẳng. Và đấy là cái mà mình cảm nhận rằng là họ nhìn vào cái khả năng của mình. Tất nhiên là khi mà đi tuyển việc thì họ có rõ ràng những cái những cái tiêu chí tuyển việc, ví dụ như bằng cấp là 1, kinh nghiệm làm việc là 2, và sau đó thì là qua một bước trình phỏng vấn. Thế nhưng mà trong khi quá trình phỏng vấn và quá trình mà họ xem xét hồ sơ thì bao giờ họ cũng để ý tới, thứ nhất là cân bằng về giới, thứ nhất là cân bằng về cả những cái giới tính này, về các chủng tộc này. Ví dụ như mình là người châu Á chẳng hạn, thì rõ ràng là trong khi ví dụ như trong cái khoa của mình họ đang thiếu nam, thì khi họ tuyển họ nói rằng họ sẽ ưu tiên nam, hoặc là khoa mình thiếu người về những cái người về những cái chủng tộc khác nhau, ví dụ người châu Á chẳng hạn, thì có thể đó sẽ là một những ưu tiên. Thế và mình nghĩ rằng là trong cái quá trình tuyển việc tất nhiên là nó sẽ có những cái sự rất là cân bằng, công bằng với tất cả mọi người. Ai có khả năng thì là người đấy sẽ được vào. Thế và sau đó thì mình khi vào làm việc thì mình nhận được ngay cái sự hỗ trợ, nghĩa là một cái người có, nghĩa là được không những từ là cái chị sếp và từ đồng nghiệp. Và thứ hai là họ phân ngay cho mình một cái người mà để gọi là mentor. Cái người mentor này là cái người mà theo mình suốt trong cái năm đầu tiên, hướng dẫn mình trong công việc cụ thể, hướng dẫn mình trong những cái gọi là cho mình những kiến thức về tổ chức, về khoa, về về đồng đội, về những cái thủ tục. Bởi vì thực ra mình chuyển từ gọi là hành nghề, từ practice sang cái gọi là sang academic, nó là một cái sự chuyển rất là lớn. Và thứ hai là mình cũng hòa nhập vào một cái thế giới gọi là không phải là người Việt Nam và là người như đấy. Thế là nó là nhiều cái sự chuyển, một cái transition, một sự chuyển bước rất là lớn. Thế nhưng cái sự giúp đỡ cái sự giúp đỡ đấy nó là không phải sự giúp đỡ về mang tính chất cá nhân, mà đó là cái thủ tục của khoa. Đó là cái mà họ đấy là một cái bất kỳ ai vào trong cái nghề
Cái
này
quy
cũng,
trình đúng không ạ? Cái quy
cái
trình
quy
mà để
trình nó
họ
như
giúp
thế,
đỡ cho những
cái quy
người
trình
mới
họ
đến
giúp
làm
đỡ
việc.
và rất là rõ ràng, rất là rõ ràng, rất là transparent, chứ không phải là người này thì họ đối xử thế này, người kia họ đối xử thế kia. Ai vào cũng được một cái một cái quy trình như thế. Có người thì sử dụng cái quy trình đấy rất là tốt, nhưng ví dụ như mình thì mình cảm thấy là họ bất kỳ một cái gì mà họ cho mình thì mình sử dụng, mình nghiên cứu và mình muốn là sử dụng tất cả những cái sự giúp đỡ của tất những người mà mình offer cho mình. Thế nhưng có những người thì họ cũng không keen lắm về những cái quy trình đó, thì đấy là tùy thuộc theo cái việc mà mình có sử dụng những cái cơ hội đó không. Thì mình nghĩ rằng là cơ hội là một chuyện, và cái người mà khi mình vào mình sử dụng cơ hội đấy như thế nào thì đấy là một việc rất là quan trọng. Và luôn luôn là ví dụ như cái dự án này chẳng hạn, thì thực ra là khi mình nhìn thấy cái dự án quảng cáo ở trên website của trường, và mình đã liên lạc với chị Sarah và chị Helen để cho mình tham gia, thì đó là một trong những cái mà mình chủ động để học hỏi, để được học thêm kiến thức về, thứ nhất là về dự án, về nghiên cứu, về quản lý và tất cả những thứ như thế. Và đấy là cái cách mà mình trong 3 năm vừa rồi mình liên tục như là reach out với tất cả mọi người để được học hỏi, được tham gia tất cả những cái hoạt động mà nó phù hợp cho mình, phù hợp với cái mục tiêu mà mình muốn hướng tới trong những năm trong 3 năm tới. Thì mình nghĩ là cái quan trọng nhất là phải biết mình muốn gì. Thế và cái thứ hai là xem có những ai và những dự án nào, những hoạt động nào mà nó phù hợp với cái mục đích của mình, và mình reach out với họ, và mình vừa để có cái học hỏi và vừa để họ giúp đỡ mình. Đấy.
Tuyệt vời. Dạ, em cảm ơn chị rất nhiều vì đã trả lời câu hỏi. Dạ không biết quý thầy cô mình còn câu hỏi nào nữa không ạ? Nếu không thì mình sẽ ngưng cái buổi workshop tại đây. Dạ, nhưng nếu mà quý thầy cô có theo dõi trong fanpage của dự án thì mình sẽ thấy là mình có những cái workshop liên quan đến mentoring session. Và hiện tại thì nhóm dự án cũng đang thảo luận xem là cái concept cho mentoring session này nó sẽ diễn ra như thế nào. Vì vậy tụi em một lần nữa rất là mong sẽ nhận được cái sự góp ý từ quý vị tham gia hôm nay thông qua bản khảo sát. Chẳng hạn như trong cái session mentoring session thì quý thầy cô có muốn các giáo sư bên UK họ chia sẻ thêm cái gì trong cái mentoring session này không? Hoặc là một cái dạng concept nào đó về mentoring session mà quý thầy cô mong muốn sẽ được tham gia vào, thì tụi em rất là trông đợi cái phản hồi của quý thầy cô. Chắc mình mở camera lên giúp em để cho tụi em chụp lại cái bức hình đầu tiên của cái buổi workshop này, và em hy vọng là quý thầy cô sẽ tiếp tục đồng hành cùng tụi em trong những cái workshop tiếp theo. So thank you so much, Professor Helen and Professor Sarah. We may start the workshop today. It's very, very interesting workshop today, I guess. So we will open the camera and take a picture together. Yeah, thank you. Miss Ngọc will take action for taking picture for us. So please open the camera so we will take a picture with you. And thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope that you also join our MOOC course relating to women leadership. It's about women leadership, but we welcome all male to join the course. Yes.
Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for taking part in the workshop today, as well as the MOOC, which we hope you join. The next workshop is on the 22nd of May at 2:30 in the afternoon, 14:30, and it's about the language of leadership. So we hope people will be able to join us again then.
Lovely to meet you all. Have a lovely evening.
So 1, 2, 3, smile. Yes, virtual already captioned. So thank you again. Bye bye. See you later. We will send the slide, the video recording and other document to you through email, and also the survey link. Yeah, thank you so much. Bye bye.